You send the vice president. If it works out, great. You look like a genius for sending him. And if it doesn't work out, it's the vice president.
I like that idea. Sure. What? This way, if it works out, I'm going to take the credit. If it doesn't work out, I'm blaming JD. You better be careful, JD. He's going to turn his plane around and get the hell out of here. Yeah, I like that idea. I think it's a good idea.
This is footage from last week's G7 summit. Rubio's expression became the biggest highlight, described by English media as ashen and expressionless. Why was he so unhappy in public? Because just before this, a heated argument broke out within the White House. The CIA director, holding intelligence documents, confronted Trump directly, calling him a total sucker. While the family was still bickering, at the negotiating table in Switzerland, the Iranians flipped the table and quit, scaring the mediator, Pakistan's prime minister, into a top 10 shocked face meme of 2026. The recent situation in Iran seems to have evolved from a long, tedious mess into a dramatic Hollywood blockbuster. We haven't talked about Iran in a while, so today I'll sort out the context for you, looking at this internal White House political conflict spillover, the shell game and exploitation of the US-Iran memorandum, and that red shadow lurking in the darkness. On February 28th of this year, President Trump ordered a joint military strike with Israel against Iran, codenamed Operation Epic Fury. This is the largest U.S. military action in over 20 years. But friends, you might not know that before this war started, the White House was actually in an uproar. At the center of the argument were two people, Vance and Rubio. Vice President Vance, a former Marine and Iraq war veteran, advocates for the U.S. to avoid any more foreign wars. So regarding Iran, he was privately opposed to whether to fight this war. Also opposing it was General Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. It said General Kane laid out all the potential risks of this war, point by point, on Trump's desk. Meanwhile, Rubio is a well-known hawk in Washington. As soon as the war started, he told the media it was a wise decision, that Iran posed an imminent threat to the U.S., and this war had to happen. He also said this war was a great gift to America and the world. And Trump, as we all know, ultimately chose to fight. Once Vance saw the big boss was determined, his attitude did a 180. This was later revealed by the media. He immediately jumped to the opposite side, advocating for a quick, decisive strike to finish it before Iran could react. So from this perspective, Vance is someone who knows how to pivot. This detail would lead him to a huge gain 4 months later. Shortly after the war began on March 3rd, Trump indirectly admitted to Vance's previous anti-war stance, confirming the media leaks. He said, "Vance, he's a little different from me philosophically. I think he might not have been as enthusiastic about this war, but later he was quite active." At the same time, Rubio dropped a bombshell. On March 2nd, Rubio went to Capitol Hill to give a closed-door briefing to members of Congress. After the briefing, reporters swarmed him, and Rubio gave an interview in the hallways of Capitol Hill. This statement, he said, "We knew there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that would precipitate an attack against American forces, and we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them, we would suffer higher casualties." This sounds reasonable enough as an explanation for the strike, but the old foxes in Washington immediately heard the subtext. Rubio was implying that the U.S. was dragged into a war with Iran by Israel. Public opinion exploded instantly, especially among the MAGA influencers who previously supported Trump. Tucker Carlson said, "This is Israel's war, not America's war." Megyn Kelly said those American soldiers who died on the battlefield didn't die for America, they died for Israel. Crucially, Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi seized on Rubio's words to fan the flames, saying Rubio admitted what they'd known all along: the U.S. launched an unnecessary war for Israel. The next day, while meeting German Chancellor Scholz in the Oval Office, Trump was asked if he'd been dragged in by Israel. Trump replied, "I wanted to strike. If anyone dragged anyone, maybe I dragged Israel into it." A day later, Rubio held a press conference and quietly corrected himself, saying Iran posed an imminent threat to the U.S. and the action had to happen regardless. This was a watershed moment. From that day on, Rubio stopped being so vocal about the Iran issue. As for Vance, he also had a watershed moment, which occurred 2 weeks later. During a White House cabinet meeting on March 26th, AP reporters later disclosed details of that session. The first person Trump turned to regarding Iran wasn't the Secretary of State or the Secretary of Defense, but Vance, asking him to report on the situation. At that moment, everyone realized Vance had taken charge of the Iran issue. Why Vance? Wasn't he against the war? Wasn't he focused on domestic issues? There's a key reason for this. Vance was the U.S. representative Iran specifically asked to deal with. Why? Reportedly, Iranian intelligence had monitored the White House debates for months. They knew Vance was one of the few who tried to persuade Trump against war. So Iran signaled to intermediaries that they were willing to talk to Vance, but not to Witkoff or Kushner. By early April, a plot that even Washington pundits couldn't fathom began to unfold. Vance took the lead. On April 11th, he flew to Islamabad to meet with General Munir, Pakistan's Army Chief of Staff. The general is Pakistan's true military strongman and a vital channel for U.S.-Iran communication. Vance established a direct hotline with him. By late April, marathon negotiations began in Islamabad. U.S. media revealed that Trump called Vance 12 times that night. By early May, headlines in the U.S. media began to feature words like these: the U.S. and Iran are close to reaching a memorandum of understanding. Then, around June 15th, as we all know, the U.S.-Iran memorandum of understanding was officially signed. And the contents of this memorandum of understanding made 3 other people in the White House anxious. These 3 people are Secretary of Defense Hegseth, Secretary of State Rubio, and the intelligence chief, CIA Director Ratcliffe. The American media outlet Axios exclusively reported that during a secret meeting just before the memorandum was to be announced, CIA Director Ratcliffe couldn't sit still. He went directly to Trump with top-secret intelligence and said bluntly, the intelligence doesn't support this agreement at all, because the internal tip-off intercepted by the CIA is that this group of Iranian mullahs has no intention of giving up their nuclear program, and they have no such sincerity. So, Mr. President, you've been deceived. You're just a sucker. And those who support this agreement are Vance, Witkoff, and Kushner. Do you think Rubio's expression could be any good? On the White House side, the 2 factions are fighting tooth and nail in private. On the other side, a major drama has quietly begun on the international stage at the front line. Yesterday, at a resort by Lake Lucerne in Switzerland, the 4 parties, the United States, Iran, Pakistan, and Qatar, prepared to start the first round of negotiations. Vance arrived early, waiting for the arrival of the Iranian representatives. Iranian Foreign Minister Araki arrived late. Upon entering the venue, instead of greeting Vance first, he walked straight toward the nearby Pakistani Prime Minister Sharif. With a somber face, he dropped a sentence. To protest President Trump's threats, Iran has decided to withdraw from the negotiations. Sharif was dumbfounded at that moment. This scene was captured by the camera. Sharif's face was one of shock, bewilderment, and disbelief. All last night, this expression went viral on social media. Some say it's one of the top 10 most bewildered and shocked faces globally in 2026 so far. Friends, do you think his face can make the cut? If you think it should, give me a like and let me know. Later, both sides sat down again, and finally, a statement was released saying that progress had been made in the negotiations. There's a very subtle Ramachan effect here. Iranian Speaker Ghalibaf went back and told his domestic media that after they left the venue, they relayed messages indirectly through Qatar and Pakistan as intermediaries, and the whole process lasted over 80 minutes. Vance said the whole process lasted about 9 hours. 80 minutes in 9 hours, that's nearly a 7-fold difference. How could the descriptions of the same event from both sides be so far apart? So this whole drama of boycotting talks, returning, and then reaching an agreement was essentially a play designed by Iran. Iran really has the audacity to poke the tiger. So what are the results of such a play? The official announcement listed 4 points. First, both sides agreed on a 60-day roadmap to continue negotiating the final agreement within 60 days. Second, a group will be established to ensure the safety of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. Third, establish a deconfliction mechanism to handle the Lebanon issue, which is the issue between Hezbollah and Israel. Fourth, Iran agrees to allow International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors to re-enter Iran. Vance claimed that day that this is a major milestone, the first step to permanently ending Iran's nuclear weapons program, and it's the achievement he emphasized most. But friends, less than a few hours after Vance said those words, the Tasnim news agency, which is under the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, immediately published an article saying, "We never agreed to let IAEA inspectors in." It also said such things must wait until a final agreement is signed, and a final agreement is unlikely to be reached. See how provocative Iran is? They're really not afraid of the US beating them up. Friends, speaking of which, I'd like to do a survey. With this memorandum of understanding, do you think that after 60 days, the US will still inevitably have to take military action again? Or do you think the two sides might actually avoid firing again and reach a final agreement because of this? Come on, if you agree with the former and think it'll eventually be settled by fire, type "still going to fight." If you agree with the latter, type "peace from now on." Let's see how our friends view the direction of this matter. Given Iran's usual tone, being able to reach such a memorandum is a milestone move. So there's a question that needs to be asked. What did they get? What did the US give them in exchange for this memorandum of understanding? This is the most critical question today. Today, US Treasury Secretary Bessent posted a tweet announcing that in view of Iran's commitment to guarantee navigation in the Strait of Hormuz and to allow IAEA inspectors into Iran, the U.S. Treasury Department is issuing a temporary 60-day general license authorizing the production, delivery, and sale of Iranian oil. What does this mean? First, this is a general license from the U.S. Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control. It opens up global transactions for Iran's crude oil, petrochemicals, and all petroleum products all at once, until 60 days later, August 21st. This is the first time since 2018 that Iranian oil has officially returned to the international market. Second, this license states that Iran is allowed to use US dollars for settlement. Third, this license allows Iran's central bank, national oil company, and Ministry of Petroleum to participate in transactions. Now, you should know that these institutions were all previously listed by the US as targets of global counterterrorism sanctions because they directly provide financial support to the Revolutionary Guard and Hezbollah. So such a move shows that the US has officially opened the floodgates for Iran and is funneling money in a targeted way. So how much is such a license worth? How much cold hard cash will Iran get because of this? How much money did Iran actually get? According to data uncovered by the OSINT Open Source Intelligence Agency, there are currently 140 million barrels of Iranian crude oil stranded in tankers at sea alone. Now, based on the current oil prices, which have already dropped, from this part alone, Iran could get at least $10.5 billion. If you add the inventory and land-based storage tanks, at least $12 billion in hard currency would flood into Tehran within 2 months. This $12 billion, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard is probably laughing in their sleep. But have you thought about this? Once Iran gets this transfusion, the pressure on Israel will surely intensify. Can Israel, with a knife already at its throat, agree to this? Of course not, so Israel's reaction is shock, or as they say in English, a state of shock. Netanyahu's former advisor and former national security advisor said in an interview that this is a terrible deal. The US is paying real money for what is at most a letter of wishful thinking. And Netanyahu himself also spoke out today, saying that IDF forces in southern Lebanon have complete freedom of action without any restrictions. He reiterated that Israel will not withdraw from the security zone in Lebanon. So he's using the most subtle diplomatic language to tell Washington that he doesn't recognize this agreement. Israel won't recognize it, of course, and you should know that Iran won't either. Why is that? The Mullah regime exists for two main purposes. First, anti-Americanism, and second, its nuclear program. Iranian President Pezeshkian even announced in Tehran this Sunday that we will never give up our right to enrich uranium. So why would Iran sign such an agreement? What does it mean for them? It's actually a temporary sellout to buy some breathing room. Get the $12 billion first, fill their bellies during the 60 days of lifted sanctions, and cash out the 140 million barrels of crude oil at sea. The Iranian regime will swallow these benefits first, and then they'll find a way to make the negotiations fail. How? By instigating Hezbollah to attack Israel. First, there's a clause in this memorandum called the Lebanon Deconfliction Mechanism, which is what the deconfliction group we mentioned earlier is supposed to do. Vance considers this one of the most important outcomes of the negotiations. But think about it. Is it easy to achieve in reality? Not only is it difficult, it could easily become a trap. For decades, we've known that Lebanon has never been at peace. Hezbollah's rockets, Israeli airstrikes, a ceasefire today, war tomorrow, it's all just business as usual. Hezbollah always says Israel fired the first shot, while Israel always says Hezbollah provoked them first. As soon as an explosion goes off on the Lebanese border, Iran can immediately stand up and say, hey, the deconfliction mechanism we requested has been destroyed by Israel. I'm suspending the negotiations. That's why Iranian Foreign Minister Arakchi said today that the first real test is the Lebanon de-escalation group. Once the firing starts, Iran can announce a suspension of talks, which could directly drag the negotiations to death, extending it from 60 days to 120, or even further. And for every day it's delayed, Iran gets another day for its nuclear program, another day of survival, another day of oil sales, and another day to recover. Furthermore, once these negotiations are suspended, it will force Trump to choose between two options: either support Israel in returning to the battlefield to continue fighting, or pressure Israel to make concessions. Between these two scenarios, friends, which one do you think is more likely? Let me know in the comments. This move makes it so the United States can't finish the fight, yet can't easily walk away. This reminds me of what Professor Yuan Hongbing, a legal scholar living in Australia, said a few days ago. He obtained explosive intelligence from a person of conscience within the system, stating that before the CCP instructed Pakistan to facilitate this US-Iran memorandum, Xi Jinping issued an internal directive within the CCP to turn the signing of the memorandum into another starting point to bog down the US and keep it deeply mired in the Middle East, rather than an end. You see, the directive also said to be wary of the so-called moderates, represented by the Iranian president, taking full control of Iran, and to take effective measures to let the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, a staunch anti-American force, dominate Iran's future national political direction. The leak also said that after Mojtaba, the son of Iran's former supreme leader Khamenei, was injured in the war, the CCP secretly provided medical aid to save his life. Although we have no way to verify the truth of this leak from the outside, logically it makes perfect sense and explains everything we are seeing now. The CCP has been supporting anti-American forces, especially in the Middle East, just to keep the US bogged down in the Middle Eastern quagmire, unable to free itself or attend to other matters. So the most important question is, was Trump aware of this? I don't think Trump was completely unaware, otherwise he wouldn't have warned yesterday that your manipulation of high-level mercenaries is not permitted. This statement was not only a warning to Iran, but also a knock on the CCP. Today, Trump said again that no tolls will be collected in the Strait of Hormuz for 60 days, and none after 60 days either, unless these tolls are collected by and for the use of the United States to compensate for the cost of the US serving as the Middle East's guardian angel. And at almost the same moment, Trump tweeted, Iranian Speaker Galalazab and Foreign Minister Arakchi flew directly to the capital of Oman after their meeting in Switzerland. What were they doing there? According to Reuters, they were there to discuss a potential framework for joint management of the Strait of Hormuz with the Sultan of Oman. So Iran has no intention of letting go. They are already pulling Oman into the fray, preparing to go head-to-head with the US after 60 days. So what might happen after 60 days? Senator Graham, after spending 4 or 5 hours alone with Trump last Friday, said on a CBS television program, I think this diplomacy will fail, and then President Trump will seize the Strait of Hormuz by force, and the US will charge all ships passing through the strait fees to pay for the cost of our military operations. If Iran objects to the US controlling the strait, then we will completely destroy them. So the 60-day countdown has already begun. Subscribe to Zen Viewpoint, and let's wait together to see the final move in this game of chess. Friends, do you think the US will ultimately have to use firepower to crush Iran to solve this problem? Or do you think they can achieve their goals through these repeated negotiations? Let me know in the comments. Alright, that's all for today. Thank you for watching. If you like my show, don't forget to give me a like before you leave. New friends, welcome to subscribe to Zen Viewpoint, and feel free to share my show with your friends. Every interaction is the greatest encouragement and support for me, and it also helps trigger YouTube's recommendation algorithm. Don't forget, thanks to Olivia Shu for the suggestion, friends, clicking that hype button, the promotion feature, can also help me spread the video further and faster. Thank you all. All right, thanks for watching. We'll see you again this Thursday at the same time on Zen Viewpoint. See you there.